Hey, it's Aaron, metal theologian. Alright, so, it's funny, I've been listening to pretty much nothing but Blue Oyster Cult still, so I was like, well, what can I make a fucking video about? Because I don't want to do the Blue Oyster Cult one yet. You know, I don't think I've ever done a feature on Deep Purple. And, like, given that I've talked about Deep Purple so many times in the past, and I could make an argument they're my favorite band ever. Um, it really seems like maybe it's about time to talk about some of these fucking records. And I have a few interesting ones to show off too. And you know, I've actually like these are records I've spent a lot of time listening to. It's like a lot of times I'll show shit and talk about sort of my impressions of them and that kind of shit. But these are records. I mean, some of these I bought when I was 12. Okay, I mean these are some of like the records that I've owned the longest out of my whole collection. And yes, we'll see how far it goes. This is probably gonna get split into two parts. I think this is gonna be the first part, sort of like through like sort of the golden era, and then the second half will be like the Coverdale era and the reunion, and then like compilations and live albums that I have because some of that stuff's worth talking about. I mean, one thing that Deep Purple kind of has in common with Jimi Hendrix is that there's just a ridiculous number of like kind of exploito compilations that all kind of have the same songs on them and shit, you know, but just one after another, and it's all the same shit. And so, you know, I mean, I don't have all of those. I basically have the ones that I really like, and I think there's a reason to have. With the exception maybe of 24 Karat Purple, because that was actually the first one I ever heard, and that was the one that kind of originally blew me away. Um, yeah, so that's kind of a glaring omission in a way, but I mean, I have everything on it on other records, but even so, just because of what it represents. I'll just talk about that when I get there. But this is what we're listening to actually. Merciful Metal hyped this shit, and I went and sought them out. There's a band called Kalibos. And this is a recent reissue of this Czech band on kind of a joint effort between Corpse Records and Monster Nation. And I sent away for this from a guy in Czechia, and it actually turned out it was the guy behind one of the labels, and he was like, it was really cool is the bottom line. And the records were really cheap. I mean, I had to pay to ship them from the Czech Republic, but I got that one and this one. I'm just hyping them here a little bit as a public service because these records are fucking fantastic, and it's the sort of person you ought to be supporting. So, Deep Purple being on a major label, it just seems like it's fucking asking for shit if I try and play that shit. So I'm just gonna let it go. I do have a soda though, which we're also gonna hype a little bit here. I think I've encountered this Tepachito brand before, but I'm not sure if I've actually had any of these. And this is a craft pineapple and coconut artificially flavored cider drink. And I kind of wonder how it can be artificially flavored and a craft soda, quote unquote. You know, it kind of seems like there might be a little bit of a contradiction there, but we're going to give this a fucking sip and see how we like it. It's a lot more tang than I expected. Like a lot more sort of a citrusy edge, you know what I mean? It's like pineapple can do that sometimes, but this is almost like a lemon or something in there. It's kind of nuts. If there's a flavor that's really coming through, it's the coconut, which is fine with me. I mean, that's why I bought this shit. I drink pineapple. Well, yeah, I drink pineapple shit all the time, really, so. Yeah, it's a weird one. I'm really not quite sure if I like it or not because that bite is like so intense. You know, it's definitely interesting, but it's not necessarily one I'd reach for. Like, if you're really thirsty, I don't know if this is one you want to reach for because it sort of like has enough tartness in it that you sort of, ooh, you know what I mean? It's not like refreshing like a glass of water or like a banana soda or something like that, you know? It's pretty tasty though. It is actually kind of better if you take a smaller sip rather than like really filling your mouth up like what I tend to do. So, you know, definitely worth a try. Here this might be a little clue. The ingredients: purified carbonated water, sugar, fermented pineapple juice, a natural flavor. That's probably it. It's probably the fermentation that I'm tasting. That's interesting. And I think it's good too, but I'm not positive. Okay, so anyway, I might as well just say up front, I don't have every single Deep Purple record. The fact is, I have owned all of the early ones, but I got rid of the first two at some point and never really bothered reacquiring them because frankly, they're kind of crap, man. The first couple Deep Purple records, like I can listen to those and sort of appreciate what they were doing. But I actually came across this cheap at one point. This is actually a compilation of the. I think it's just Tetragrammaton, actually. Yeah, so it's an American one. But this is Purple Passages. You can see that. It's funny. This one was pictured on the back of the copy of 24 Karat Purple. That was the first one I ever heard. And this one seems super mysterious to me because in Germany I couldn't find this thing anywhere. I eventually saw it maybe once or twice, but it's a lot easier to find over here for some reason. So like it had the other albums pictured, I could track those down, but this one just sort of seemed like this weird mystery. So check out this gatefold. Like it's kind of a waste of a gatefold and kind of awesome at the same time. With all that fucking text that, I was gonna say that I'm never gonna read, but like when I got this shit, I totally would have read this and like absorbed every word and shit. Anyway, so this is Mark 1 Deep Purple, and like, you have a lot of, even on the compilation, you have Hey Joe, which is like this fucking slowed down version of it, which I guess they tipped their hat to Led Zeppelin on by not giving credit to the original songwriter, but just taking it for themselves. You have Hush, which is a fine song, Emeretta isn't bad, there's really nothing too bad. And actually most of the songs in here are pretty good, like Mandrake Root I can totally hang with, Ring That Neck is kind of a classic a little bit as far as like their instrumental jams go. And it's kind of cool to have a little bit of this early stuff around for that reason because it sort of contains that genesis of sort of like the jammy, like intense and heavy, but still sort of jammy band that they would become like during sort of the golden era. But then you still have Kentucky Woman on here, man. And I don't know. Then you have a bunch of songs. Probably half of this comes off their third album, which I always called April when I was a kid, but is actually self-titled. And that one I do have because this is the one out of the early Deep Purple era that I really think is worth keeping around. This is really a fantastic record. It's definitely like an old psychedelic record. It rocks. How about this for a waste of a gatefold? Like, this record rocks in places, but it's not like if you want to hear something that sounds like Machine Head and you get this, you're gonna be disappointed unless you're 12 and like you really want to get into it because you really care about that shit so much. So it's like the main track on this thing, April. These days I tend to find it a bit ponderous. But, when I was a kid, I was so impressed by that. The way it's sort of divided into these three movements, sort of the first one with, the guitars in that, the instrumental section, and the middle section with the strings and the woodwinds, and then sort of like the rock and roll section at the end. The sort of like 12-minute opus, beating the rhyme at the Ancient Mariner at their own game, like 15 years before the fact, maybe? Of course, whether it beats Rime of the Ancient Mariner is up to a discussion, but there are sorts of just like cool little weird things on here though, like these sleeper tracks like Bird Has Flown. Chasing Shadows is a great opener. It has like this weird ass drum part with like all this extra percussion in it and shit, and this bouncy ass bass line that's just sort of all over the place. Then there's another tune on here where like there's an intro where the drums are turned backwards. Actually, rock and rollishly called The Painter. That's up there with The Writer by Odin for heavy song titles, right? But these are really cool songs, and I'll tell you something. The cover on this one, they do Lelania, which is a Donovan song. It's funny. It's credited just to Leach. And when I was a kid, I had no idea. I barely would have known who Donovan was when I first got this, let alone who Leach was, But it's an interesting record. It has a lot of different textures, but it coheres. And even when it kind of goes off a little bit and gets a little bit far up its own ass, I still think there's a lot to enjoy in this record. So if you're going to check out anything from like, the Mark 1 Deep Purple with Rod Evans and Nick Simper, I think this is definitely the one to go with. With the Hieronymus Bosch cover. Which they sort of did like this, so I don't know, because I'm going to like hang it on my wall like that or something. Whatever, I'm sure it seemed like a good idea to someone at the time. It's a little bit ridiculous. It's actually kind of a little bit of classic '60s ridiculousness too, because you have the the famous painting, right? But then you have the band sort of stuck in there. Fucking Richie Blackmore's wearing a top hat, of course. Yeah, so we're off to like, a warm start. A record that I like, that I have a lot of good feelings about, but not a record where I go, oh my god, this is a fucking all-time classic. This one is really kind of a pretentious turd, man. Like, this is like a whole album of April, and it's just kind of too much, man. Like, according to the lore, to the degree that I'm, sort of follow that kind of shit, this was John Lord's baby. I mean, it says composed by John Lord, right? And then, like, Deep Purple and Rock, which was the next one, was more like a, Richie Blackmore record with Roger Glover, maybe. And, that one fucking smokes. So, like, if they need to let John Lord have this so he could do what he does on the next few fucking records, which is awesome, he's not like... I don't want to imply for a second that John Lord was like the weak link in this chain, because fuck, he wasn't. But really the most interesting thing about this is that this is the first album with the classic lineup. It's kind of ironic that it would be this sort of weird runoff or one-off project, but it has has the pictures of a really young-looking Ian Gillan there with, like 2 verses worth of lyrics that he wrote on the way to the concert hall or something like that. And, it's a valiant effort, I think. I mean, I honestly haven't played this thing in probably 20 years. This is the one that really I never reached for. And, I don't know, man. It was the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. Rock and roll had gone from being Elvis Presley being too risque for Ed Sullivan to being sort of respectable. And I can see where they're kind of trying to contribute something to that with this record. But it's just not really a record you need to give a shit about, you know what I mean? So from the low point there to the high point, okay? Oh, shit, I thought I had one more copy of this than I do, and I have 2 copies, I know. So I've said before that this is the record where... every time I buy a record from the 70s, like the first half of the 70s, a German record that I heard was a rocker, or... I don't know. Some Norwegian Obscuro that's supposed to be heavy. What I'm always hoping it's going to sound like is this, man. This record, I've loved since the first time I heard it, and it's never subsided. I've gone through phases where, like, I thought maybe Child in Time was a little bit overblown, but you know something, man? I've come back around. Last time I listened to that was right before I made this video, man. I actually listened to it on a different record on a comp, but I listened to it all the way through. Unfortunately, on the American versions of this record, I actually bought this one when I was still living in Germany, so I didn't even know this for a long time. I didn't even know this until a friend of mine bought it on CD, and I was like, what the fuck? But there's a big, like, intro at the beginning of Speed King, which is like this big sort of barrage of noise that sort of then calms down to like this sort of, really understated, like, sort of organ thing, and then it comes with the snare and the going into Speed King. And the American version just starts with that drum hit going right into the song like that. And honestly, I think it's effective. And if you wanted to talk about whether it's better with or without the intro, I could probably argue either side of that. But as far as I'm concerned, man, the song's incomplete without that. And if the song is incomplete, then the album is incomplete, because this record is just fucking perfection from start to finish. I mean, I suppose you could argue that they wasted, some gateful waste here, But from a musical standpoint, every song is fucking great, man. Into the Fire is one of the meatiest riffs ever. Hard Lovin' Man, like, chugs along like the real sort of proto-metal that these guys kind of had a reputation for. Speed King, I mean, you probably know that anyway, and Child in Time is like their little epic that's like the successful and fully realized epic that April kind of wasn't. And Bloodsucker is just kind of chaotic. Like, it fits. It's a song, you know what I mean? But the writing around it is just kind of like feels haphazard and kind of jagged. Almost like the kind of shit that Slayer would really be good at with on their first album, The Show No Mercy. But I don't oversell it either here. Yeah, and then Flight of the Rat and Living Wreck like fit right into their spaces perfectly too. Like, Living Wreck is sort of a little bit more of a swagger, although with a really weird but awesome sort of like organ flourish in the main riff. That sort of slows things down a little between the meat and heft of Into the Fire and just like the, intensity and, rock, the pure rock of Hard Lovin' Man. Just fucking fantastic from start to finish, man. Absolutely perfect record. And actually this other version of it too. This is also a European one, but this is an early German pressing of it that I came across locally. There's a version with the white cover with this Hör zu Langspielplatte thing. That means listen. And this one also has one of these wallet covers too, where the record comes out on the inside. I actually don't know if this is even a German pressing of this other one. It probably is. A little bit later. Well, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and bore y'all with that shit. The cover variation's kind of interesting, but I don't think sitting here and just like going over that shit is so great. So anyway, yeah, this is probably my favorite Deep Purple record, and quite possibly my favorite record ever. But right after it, man, they came out with a banger called fucking Fireball. And Jesus Christ, if this fucking record... Now, this record is a little bit more sort of schizophrenic. It has all these weird different moods on it, you know? So, like, again, this is the European version. So the American version had Strange Kind of Woman on it instead of Demon's Eye. I actually don't have a copy of the Strange Kind of Woman single, because that's how it came out over there, but I have the song on compilations and shit. Obviously, there's a really famous version on Made in Japan, which we'll get to shortly. Fireball is one of the greatest songs of all time, I swear to Christ. The opening drum intro just fucking... I mean, I've known it since I was... I mean, if I was about 12, it's a good 35 years, man. And it still blows me away like I've never fucking heard it before, man. The intensity in that song was just amazing. And just fucking incredible. It just goes all the way through. The fucking screaming organ at the end during this sort of repeat chorus to fade section of it. Just like that pedal tone, that but in the high register that like hangs in there, man. So No kind of slows it down a little bit, and Demon's Eye is a little bit more straightforward too. Both decent rockers, you know what I mean? They're cool. And Anyone's Daughter, I mean, I thought it was hilarious when I was in my teens, right? It's about some guy like going around fucking people's daughters, like ha ha ha, you know? It feels kind of throwaway to me now with my age and wisdom. I don't think Deep Purple ever made a better side of a record, though, than side 2 of Fireball, man. The Mule, with, like, its weird sort of occult overtones, which are probably more Asimov with the Mule and shit than the Lucifer that's sort of hinted at and shit. But, and that long, like, weird middle section that they used for a drum solo on Made in Japan. An awesome fucking... Ian Pace is a fucking underrated drummer anyway, like, just all the time. His fucking... main drum pattern on that song is fucking unique. I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like it. It's actually pretty simple. Like, I could almost play it, but it's just ingenious, you know what I mean? And of course he fills it in, and it's brilliant, you know? It's simple, but it's just fucking brilliant. And then Fools is even creepier, man. It has like this weird sort of like, you know, sinister kind of vibe that it builds up. And it sort of comes in with like these like intense, like sort of scream verses, and then goes back to this weird sort of vibe, you know? And then No One Came maybe pales a little bit compared to those two, but it's a fucking great song anyway, man. Like, lyrically it's a little bit silly, you know, just sort of about, you know... I don't know if it's really performance anxiety, if you're afraid that no one's going to show up for your show, but I mean, that's what it's pretty simple, you know. Maybe there's some underlying thing that they... significance, but I kind of doubt it, given that Ian Gillan's lyrics are kind of weird anyway, you know. I think it was Martin Popoff, where I heard him say that, like, something to the effect that Ian Gillan kind of has a strange relationship with the English language. And, yeah, credit where it's due, because that's pretty fucking dead on. But an absolutely incredible record. And actually, I think this is my first copy of it. I got another one to sort of upgrade it, and I'll show you why. This is a weird little thing that I've actually never seen on any other record. It looks like, you see how it has that yellow harvest label, or that sort of like, greenish yellow. There are a couple spots in the vinyl where there are little marks like that. You see that? And it actually is the same color as the center label. Right there, and then there's another one right there. And they make these big popping sounds, but you probably can't see it on the camera. But if you look at it closely, it actually looks like there's some sort of fuck up at the plant, and like a little piece of the label got embedded in the vinyl like that. It's still fun to say vinyl. So, yeah, there's that. Actually, the insert with this thing too, with the lyrics. Might as well show that off. A previous owner, like, colored some of this shit in for me. And made the note that Deep Purple is one of all the best groups. Yeah, well, you know something? I fucking agree. Wholeheartedly. Alright, so this is another one. Actually, both this one, no, not in rock, but this one I actually had an American pressing of at one point. And I eventually got rid of it because, honestly, I just couldn't stand hearing Strange Kind of Woman in the middle of, where Demon's Eye belongs. You get used to it a certain way and you hear it a different way and it disrupts the album, even if I've got no problem with the song. I do think Demon's Eye might be a better song anyway, actually, but that's the sort of thing where it's going to depend on when you catch me. So I think this other copy is the same. But this was actually, for me, is a rare thing, which is an upgrade. This one actually doesn't have the wallet cover, but it is a German press. You can see it's that EMI Electrola logo there on the inside. Same pictures though, and I think this one has the insert too, but I'm not sure. Yeah, there you go. This one with the clean insert. And it's in much better shape overall. This one smells like incense and the other one doesn't. But I'll tell you something, the day I get annoyed about buying a record and taking it home and it smells like incense is the day it's just time to fucking hang it up. Because, I mean, let's face it. Boomers really like their incense. And boomers made a lot of good records too, so what are you gonna do, right? Alright, what do you want me to say about Machine Head? It's not my personal favorite, but the only reason is because it's so played, you know what I mean? My favorite song on this is probably Pictures of Home. There's your collage on the inside, actually. You could call that groundbreaking too, I suppose, if you wanted to. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a Leo. It's a little bit throwaway, but I really like it. Probably my favorite song on this is Lazy anymore, which is a weird song with sort of, that weird kind of swagger. In a way, it doesn't fit the mood, especially between Smoke on the Water and Space Truckin'. Here's the lyric insert. Note the purple edges there and shit. But, yeah, I mean, the fact is, this is a perfect record. It really is. I mean, never before, it was sort of a single, and then it almost felt like they disavowed it. They never really played it live or anything, but it's still a really nice single, man. Really good shit. And like I said, Pictures of Home is probably my favorite because it's kind of the most sort of rocket and the most sort of weird. It's the most sort of tempestuous, if that makes sense. It kind of feels like a swirl to me, the main riff of that song, Sure, Highway Star. I mean, if you're watching this channel and you don't know Highway Star, what am I going to say? Let me put another record here. And then we've got two more from this era. And I think we're going to hang it up until part 2, where we'll talk about some of the other ones. I know how my camera doesn't dick me over. It shuts off if I go on too long sometimes. But we're just going to get things moving here. There we go. Alright, cool. So the next one was, This might have been the first one I actually bought, although this isn't the copy I bought. I don't know what happened to the copy I bought in Germany. I bought this one after I came back to the US. I was still in high school. And this one is, I can't like verify the authenticity, but it appears to be signed by 4 of the 5 band members, so looks like Roger Glover. That looks like Ian Gillan. That looks like Ian Pace. Fucking Pacey. Can you even see that on the thing? And that one I'm not sure. It looks, if I had to guess, I'd guess Richie Blackmore, but I don't even know. How's that for kind of a crappy ass gatefold? But if they ever made a classic record, this is probably the one that is the most highly regarded because it has all that. It has all the themes that I've been talking about, but it's all fully developed. One thing about the classic era is they had 7 songs on every one of their albums, right? On the first 3 that we've already talked about, then this one, even though it's a double, also has 7 songs. And I remember riding my bike on my way home from a friend's house in the middle of the night, listening to this on headphones and listening to Space Truckin' specifically. It was dark. I was like out in some field somewhere, and actually, if Jürgen Allmann is watching, I'm pretty sure I was in Tenenlohe, sort of a suburb or part of Erlangen, and the divisions aren't quite the same. But I'm pretty sure I was riding back to Bruck from Tenenlohe, and I really got it what they were doing with Space Truckin' with that long ass jam, and I was like, wow, man. It's like seeing God, man. It's like you fucking discover the greatest band of all time. So, I've hinted a few things. This, I'm sure y'all know about Ian Gillan singing with the guitar on shit like on Strange Kind of Woman, and some of the, kind of gimmicky shit they did. And there's the awesome drum solo in The Mule. Sort of the polite clapping that you hear during Highway Star, which sounds really kind of funny and like culturally weird. It's like, oh, that's what shows are like in Japan, I guess. I doubt that's actually true now. It sure doesn't really look that way, actually. But anyway, it's an all-time classic record, man. It really deserves its reputation. I reach for the studio albums more often than I reach for this, but as far as my affection for it, that's one of the most important records in my collection. And the last one for today, actually, I don't have a very good copy of because I frankly think it's a clunker. I think Popoff gave this record a 10. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. Because this record really kind of sucks. I used to love the song Woman from Tokyo, which is amusingly misspelled on here. Although that is kind of how he says it. Tokyo. But yeah, fucking Mary Long is kind of an embarrassing song, man. Fucking Super Trooper is kind of boring, and by then I've just kind of lost interest, man. Maybe I'll play it again tonight, but this record is just, in all the years I've known it, has just never really held my attention the way a lot of the other ones have, And that includes some of the Coverdale records. So, the conventionalism is they went to shit when Coverdale joined the band, but they definitely changed a lot to the point where you can almost say they were a different band, but I disagree that they came to suck. Let me show a couple extras here. This first one is courtesy of Scott Waters. Speaking of Japanese shit, he came across this and sent it to me. That's a Highway Star, in case your katakana isn't up to snuff. I have to sound it out too, so don't feel bad. But yeah, it has this weird kind of just like single picture cover. Single paper with the notes on there, but then the shit in English. And then this fucking globe picture on the inner sleeve that actually has the record in it. And it's Highway Star on Lazy. It's a super short version of Lazy, though. It's like 2.5 minutes. Like, basically cuts the whole intro and goes right into the verse. And then after the second verse, it just kind of fades out. And that's that. It's like, it's almost like it should be called Lazy Reprise or something like that instead of Lazy. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, it's not the full song. And let me just show this one too. I found this one locally, but this is also a little water damaged, not in the greatest shape, but it is an original Never Before 45 with the purple label. And these cool looking ads on the back for all those European picture sleeve 45s. So yeah, there's a German one too. I bought it here. It seems like there are a lot of German ones. There are a lot of people in Germany. So it's pretty much as simple as that. Alright, so that's part one of the Deep Purple special. So, hope y'all enjoyed it. Thanks as always for watching. And we'll see you next time. I was going to say we'll see you next time with part two, but who the fuck knows what's going to happen. But we will see you with part two, and we'll see you next time. Whether those two statements coincide or not remains to be seen. Thanks for watching.